I want to start by making one point clear. The use of chemical weapons anywhere in the world is an inexcusable violation of international law, and the United States will not tolerate it. The Assad regime's attack against innocent Syrians in Douma, Syria on April 7th is horrifying and tragic, and it demanded an immediate response. Yesterday, United States forces, at the direction of President Trump, launched precision strikes against Assad regime targets associated with the use of chemical weapons in Syria. We launched these strikes to cripple Syria's ability to use chemical weapons in the future. We were joined by the United Kingdom and France, who demonstrated solidarity in addressing these atrocities. Americans are united in condemning Syria's inexcusable use of chemical weapons, which no civilized nation would tolerate. We are encouraged by the support we received from the senators and congressmen on both sides of the aisle. We are also extremely proud of the United States service members who carried out this operation last night. They demonstrated unwavering courage and commitment in their defense of the American people and the values and ideals our nation represents. This operation was carefully orchestrated and methodically planned to minimize potential collateral damage. I can assure you, we took every measure and precaution to strike only what we targeted, and we successfully hit every target. This operation does not represent a change in U.S. policy, nor an attempt to depose the Syrian regime. These strikes were a justified, legitimate, and proportionate response to the Syrian regime's continued use of chemical weapons on its own people. We do not seek conflict in Syria, but we cannot allow such grievous violations of international law. Our goal in Syria remains defeating ISIS by, with, and through the 70-nation coalition. But we will not stand by passively while Assad, backed by Russia and Iran, ignores international law. The Assad regime's actions in April 2017 and again on April 7th, 2018, show they have abandoned their commitments to the international community and resorted to illegal tactics against the innocent Syrian people. We call upon Russia to honor its commitment to ensure the Assad regime dismantles its chemical weapons program and never uses chemical weapons again. We support our diplomats who are working to set the conditions for the United Nations-backed Geneva process to succeed. And we look forward to working with the United Nations envoy to Syria, Staffan de Mistura. In an effort to maintain transparency, General McKenzie will now provide a detailed overview of the actual operations. General McKenzie.
Thanks, Dana. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes just talking about the military details of the strikes that we executed last night. And could I get the first graphic up, please? As you've heard from the President of the United States and directly in this room from Secretary Mattis and Chairman Dunford, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France, 3 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, conducted a proportional, precision, coordinated strike in response to the Syrian regime's continued use of chemical weapons. This combined military strike was directed against 3 distinct Syrian chemical weapons program targets, and I'm going to show them to you in turn on the monitor behind me, and I think you have access to that information also. The 3 facilities are more appropriately were fundamental components of the regime's chemical weapons warfare infrastructure. Let's go to the first slide, please. The Barza Research and Development Center. Next slide. Pardon me. The Him Shinsar Chemical Weapons Storage Facility. And last, and the next slide, please, the Him Shinsar Chemical Weapons Bunker Facility, which is located about 7 kilometers from the previous Him Shinsar site. This strike aimed to deliver a clear and ambiguous message to the Syrian regime that their use of chemical weapons against innocent civilians is inexcusable and to deter any future use of chemical weapons. We selected these targets carefully to minimize the risk to innocent civilians. We're still conducting a more detailed damage assessment, but initial indications are that we accomplished our military objectives without material interference from Syria. I'd use 3 words to describe this operation: precise, overwhelming, and effective. Let's go back to the first Barza slide, please. Against the first target, the Barza Research and Development Center, which is located in the greater Damascus area, we employed 76 missiles. 57 of these were Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles, and 19 were Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missiles, or JASSMs. As you can see for yourself from the graphics, initial assessments are that this target was destroyed. This is going to set the Syrian chemical weapons program back for years. And you also note that we've successfully destroyed 3 buildings in metropolitan Damascus, one of the most heavily defended aerospace areas in the world. Next slide, please. Against the second target, the Hem Shinsar chemical weapons storage facility, which is located in Syria just west of Homs, 22 weapons were employed: 9 U.S. TLAMs, 8 Storm Shadow missiles, 3 naval cruise missiles, and 2 Scalp land attack cruise missiles. So this target was attacked by all coalition forces. Our Tomahawks, the British Storm Shadow, and then the French missiles went against it as well. Against the third target, next slide, the Hem Shinsar chemical weapons bunker facility, we deployed 7 Scalp missiles. Again, the initial assessment is that this bunker facility was successfully hit. I'd now just like to talk a bit about the specific platforms that were part of this strike. And let's go back to the first slide, please. The missiles that I've just described were delivered from British, French, and U.S. air and naval platforms in the Red Sea, the Northern Arabian Gulf, and the Eastern Mediterranean. All weapons hit their targets at very close to the designated time on target of about 4 a.m. in Syria, which of course is 9 o'clock here on the East Coast. I'm going to give you a little more details now about the platforms. First, in the Red Sea, the Ticonderoga class cruiser Monterey fired 30 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles, and the Arleigh Burke class destroyer Laboon fired 7 Tomahawks. In the North Arabian Gulf, the Burke class destroyer Higgins fired 23 Tomahawks. In the Eastern Mediterranean, the French frigate Languedoc fired 3 missiles of their naval version of the Scap missile. Also in the Mediterranean, the Virginia-class submarine John Warner fired 6 Tomahawk missiles. In the air, 2 B-1 Lancer bombers fired 19 Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff missiles. In addition, our British allies flew a combination of Tornadoes and Typhoons and launched 8 Storm Shadow missiles. Our French allies flew a combination of Rafales and Mirages and launched 9 Scalp missiles. Taken together, and as you can see from the graphic behind me, these attacks on multiple axes were able to overwhelm the Syrian air defense system. It's also important to note that we flew a variety of defensive counter-air, tanker, and electronic warfare aircraft in support of these operations. None of our aircraft or missiles involved in this operation were successfully engaged by Syrian air defenses, and we have no indication that Russian air defense systems were employed. We are confident that all of our missiles reached their targets. At the end of the strike mission, all our aircraft safely returned to their bases. We assessed that over 40 surface-to-air missiles were employed by the Syrian regime. Most of these launches occurred after the last impact of our strike was over. It is likely that the regime shot many of these missiles on a ballistic trajectory. I mean by that, without guidance. And we assessed that the defensive efforts of Syria were largely ineffective and clearly increased risk to their own people based on this indiscriminate response. When you shoot iron into the air without guidance, it's going to come down somewhere. By contrast, the precise nature of our strike and the care which our allied team planned and executed significantly reduced the risk of collateral damage to civilians. In summary, in a powerful show of allied unity, we deployed 105 weapons against 3 targets that will significantly impact the Syrian regime's ability to develop, deploy, and use chemical weapons in the future. It's been said before, but I want to emphasize again that by comparison, this strike was double the size of the last strike in April 2017, and I'd also emphasize that this strike was a multinational effort. The precision strike was executed with France and the UK, demonstrating our unquestionable resolve. I'd like to close by noting that since the strike, we have not seen any military response from actors within Syria, and we remain postured to protect our forces and those of the coalition should anything occur.